They called her the she-wolf of France, but Isabella was no monster. She was a queen, married at 12 to England's king, who preferred his male lover over her. 4 years, she smiled through the humiliation. Then one day, she stopped smiling. She raised an army, invaded England, captured her own husband, and forced him to hand over the crown to their teenage son. Isabella went from powerless bride to the most feared woman in Europe. They should have just treated her nicely. In the year of our Lord 1308, a 12-year-old girl stood at the crossroads of destiny. Her name was Isabella, and she was about to become a queen. The daughter of the most powerful king in Europe, Philip the Fair of France, she was currency in a Game of Thrones. A chess piece. A diplomatic bargain wrapped in silk and jewels. But queens aren't born. They are forged. And Isabella would be hammered on the hardest anvil of all. England. Land of her husband-to-be. Edward II, son of the great Edward Longshanks, the Hammer of the Scots. Edward was, how shall we put it, more interested in his friends than his wife. Particularly one friend, Piers Gaveston. Isabella learned her first lesson in survival. Sometimes the cruelest wounds come from indifference. 4 years. 4 years of being a wife in name only. Of watching her husband shower affection, lands, and titles on Gaveston. Of being the most powerful woman in England, with absolutely no power at all. But Isabella was watching. Always watching. Learning who held real power. Memoizing which barons hated Gaveston. Filing away every slight, every insult, every betrayal. Her father had taught her that power isn't given. It's taken. And held with an iron grip. 1312, the future Edward III was born. Finally, Isabella had leverage. An heir to the throne. And with it, a purpose. The barons had had enough of Gaveston. This upstart had to go. But Edward refused to listen, until he had no choice. June 1312. Piers Gaveston was executed by the English barons. Edward was devastated. Isabella understood loss. But she also understood opportunity. With Gaveston gone, perhaps there was hope for her marriage. How deliciously wrong she was. Meet the Despensers. Father and son. Think Gaveston was bad. The Despensers were Gaveston with ambition, greed, and an actual brain. Within months, Hugh the Younger became Edward's new favorite. History, as they say, was repeating itself. Except this time, Isabella wasn't a naive 12-year-old. The Despensers stripped Isabella of her estates, her income, even her personal servants. They were erasing her. Systematically. Deliberately. By 1324, she had 4 children. 4 heirs to protect. And nothing, no lands, no money, no power, to protect them with. Then, like a gift from heaven, or hell, depending on your perspective, war loomed between England and France. And someone needed to negotiate peace. Isabella made her pitch. Sent her to France. Her brother was king now, Charles IV. She could negotiate where others couldn't. She could prevent war. Edward, ever the fool, agreed. He even sent their 12-year-old son, the future king, to join her. The Despensers objected, but Edward overruled them. March 1325. Isabella of France left England. She would return. But not as a supplicant queen. Not as anyone's pawn. She would return as the she-wolf. Paris. After 17 years in England, Isabella was home. And Paris reminded her of something she'd forgotten. She remembered what it felt like to be valued. The negotiations succeeded. Gascony was secure. Edward kept his French lands. Isabella had done exactly what she promised. Now, she was supposed to return to England. But here's the thing about cages. Once you've escaped one, climbing back in becomes unthinkable. September 1325. Isabella of France made a speech that changed history. She announced she would not return to England while the Despensers controlled her husband. She called them enemies of the realm. She called them tyrants. And then, in front of God and everyone, she refused to be Edward's wife. It was the medieval equivalent of dropping a microphone. And England lost its mind. Edward demanded she return. The Pope demanded she return. The Despensers demanded she return. Isabella's response: no. Enter Roger Mortimer. Baron, rebel, escapee, and, inconveniently for history's moralists, absolutely irresistible. He'd escaped the Tower of London, fled to France, and found Isabella. He offered her something Edward never had. Partnership, respect, and an army. But raising an army takes money. Lots of money. Money Isabella didn't have. She borrowed from every source she could find. She promised, begged, and leveraged her royal name. She was betting everything, her reputation, her children's inheritance, her life, on one desperate gamble. By September 1326, she was ready. With Mortimer by her side and her son as her banner, Isabella would invade England with fewer than 1,500 men. Everyone thought she was insane. Edward thought she was no threat. The Despensers thought she was finished. They were all wrong. September 24th, 1326. Orwell, Suffolk. The she-wolf came home. Edward's response was, well, there wasn't one. He was in London, apparently too shocked to move. The Despensers urged him to fight, but Edward hesitated. That hesitation would cost him everything. Isabella marched inland. And something extraordinary happened. The country rose to join her. Within days, she commanded thousands. Within weeks, tens of thousands. Barons who'd suffered under the Despensers. Knights who remembered her kindness. Common people who'd heard of her cause. They flocked to her banner. Isabella had learned her lesson well. Power isn't just taken. It's given, by those who believe in you. October 2nd. Edward finally realized the danger. London was turning against him. The Despensers were universally hated. And Isabella's army was days away. They fled west, toward Wales, hoping to raise an army. Edward had ruled England for 19 years. Now he was running from his own wife. October 15th. Isabella entered London in triumph. The city council handed her the keys. She was, in all but name, the ruler of England. But Edward was still king. The Despensers were still alive. And Isabella had learned that leaving enemies alive was a mistake. November. The weather turned. Edward's ship was blown back to shore. And Isabella's forces surrounded them. November 16th, 1326. They were captured. Edward Plantagenet, King of England, found hiding in Wales with his favourites. The Despensers were separated from Edward. Hugh the Elder was tried for treason. The verdict was inevitable. He was hanged on October 27th. His son's fate would be worse. Much worse. Hugh the Younger was starved for days, paraded through streets, and convicted of treason. His execution was medieval. Let's just say they made sure everyone understood what happened to those who defied Isabella of France. Isabella watched. Did she feel triumph? Justice? Revenge? Or did she see what she'd become? A woman who'd ordered deaths, who'd torn a kingdom apart. Whatever she felt, she buried it. Because there was still one more move to make. Edward was a problem. He was still king. And while he lived as king, Isabella's position was illegitimate. Her son couldn't rule. The country couldn't move forward. January 20th, 1327. A delegation came to Edward with an offer he couldn't refuse. Abdicate in favor of his son, or be declared unfit, and watch his entire line lose the throne. Edward II abdicated. After 19 years as king, he gave up his crown. His son, 14-year-old Edward III, was proclaimed king. But everyone knew who really ruled England. Isabella of France. The she-wolf. The woman who'd invaded a kingdom, with 1,500 men and won. She'd done it. Against impossible odds, she'd overthrown a king. She'd avenged every slight, every insult, every year of humiliation. She was victorious. Powerful. Finally in control. It was the greatest triumph of her life. It was also the beginning of the end. Edward II died in September 1327, imprisoned in Berkeley Castle. The official story was natural causes. The unofficial story, well, the unofficial story is too dark even for this tale. Isabella and Mortimer ruled for 3 years. But power, it turns out, is easier to seize than to hold. They grew arrogant. Greedy. They made the same mistakes the Despensers had made. 1330, Edward III finally took his throne. He arrested Mortimer, executed him for treason. And Isabella was spared. Her son gave her comfortable imprisonment, a generous income, and visited her regularly. Perhaps he remembered that she'd fought for his throne. Or perhaps he just loved his mother, complicated as she was. She lived there for 28 years. Reading. Praying. Remembering. She became deeply religious, wore nuns' habits, donated to the poor. Was it guilt? Regret? Or simply the exhaustion that comes from fighting so hard, for so long? We'll never know. August 22nd, 1358. Isabella of France died at age 63. She requested burial in her wedding dress, holding Edward II's heart in a silver casket. The woman who'd overthrown him wanted, in death, to lie beside him. History has never known quite what to make of Isabella of France. She-wolf. Rebel queen. Adulteress. Liberator. Tyrant. Mother. Which was she? Perhaps she was all of them. Perhaps she was a woman thrust into impossible circumstances, who made impossible choices, and paid impossible prices. She was taught to be a pawn. She chose to be a queen. And for one brief, brilliant, terrible moment, she ruled an empire. Remember her name.